Hey everyone, and welcome to Life in Business. I'm Dave, and I have a special guest with me, Caleb Collier, entrepreneur, business owner, background in politics, and actually a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm going to actually let's jump right into it, man. Let's get going.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
So I know church and state's kind of the thing you're doing right now. And so you've got a podcast and all of that. But let's get to that definitely. But if we can back up a little bit and just kind of figure out, I always find it interesting to ask people like those first or second job that you did. Because sometimes we learn like some big life lesson from it. Was there a job like that early on?
Yeah. I mean, actually, my first job that I really started working in, believe it or not, I worked at a place called Cattails where I took care of big cats, lions, and tigers.
In Spokane?
In Spokane, yeah.
Dude, I've been there.
Okay, yeah.
My kids have been there. Is that still in existence?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, they've done a lot of improvements. I worked there. I think I started there when I was 15. Lived just down the street, and
that's so cool.
It was cool. It was a fun experience.
It's so cool because all my kids have been there. Yeah, that's fun.
Not a lot of people get to have that kind of experience.
Wow.
Where you're giving tours, you're cleaning up after them, you're taking care of them, and even some of the more gruesome parts. People would bring in horses that were sickly and. They slaughter them, and then you'd have to cut them up and feed the cats with them.
Oh my gosh.
A little bit wild, but definitely a cool experience.
Literally, I was sitting here listening to you tell the story about the tours and stuff. Did you possibly given my kids tours or something?
It certainly possible, yeah.
Wow, that's a small world.
Yeah, exactly.
So how long did you work there?
I only worked there for probably about a year, maybe a year and a half.
Wow.
And it was a great experience, but I ended up moving on and joined the Marine Corps real quickly after high school. So I served for 4 years, and kind of a sweet spot there. I served from 1998 to January of 2002. So I actually got out 4 months after September 11th. Did not expected to have like an involuntary stop loss and go over to Iraq or Afghanistan. Wasn't in the cards for me. So I went to Okinawa, but other than that, pretty much just stationed in California.
After you got out of the military, so are you from this area?
No. So here's a dirty little secret, right? So I'm a Californian. I tell.
So it's half our population.
I know, it's so true. Yeah, but I always say don't hold that against me. I'm self-loathing. But yeah, born in the Bay Area. Believe it or not, I was actually born into a communist Christian hippie cult.
Communist Christian hippie. That's a mouthful.
It gets even worse. Our little group was visited by representatives of Jim Jones. So I tell people like I'm this close to drinking the Kool-Aid, and I've been rejecting it ever since.
Holy buckets!
Yeah.
I mean, there's this like historian that did this like 30-hour podcast on Jim Jones, and I haven't listened to all of it, but man, that's some wild stuff, man.
I know.
Holy buckets.
So my parents, good Christian people, they got out of that. I think we moved on when I was about 2 years old. So I have no memories.
Okay.
But that's where I was born.
Yeah.
Into that weird group. My dad had a very nomadic spirit, and so he liked to move. We never lasted anywhere longer than 4 years. So moved all over Central and Northern California. And then moved up here in 1993. And so I moved to Spokane Valley, and then later on up towards actually Cattails, which is why I worked there. And then in 98, I joined the Marine Corps and get stationed in California. So I was right back there. Yeah, California is it's a beautiful state, but it's a failed state. Yeah, if not for the politics, I think the vast majority of us would still love to live there. The beaches, I mean, it is gorgeous, right? Oh. And the weather's great typically. But California is the model. And I mean, unfortunately, Washington State has followed suit of liberal policies that just absolutely decimate a state.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you say how beautiful it is, I mean, literally one of the most beautiful places in my mind is Laguna Beach. It's just so beautiful there. So I definitely hear that. Now, so how soon or how did you get into politics?
Yeah, so after the Marine Corps, I worked a number of different jobs. I was EMT for about 7.5 years. So while I didn't go to war in the Marine Corps, I saw a lot of gruesome stuff as an EMT. A lot of weird calls that some are absolutely hilarious, some are very tragic. But did that, burned out of that, and not for the reasons people suspect. Usually people would think, you saw too much bad stuff and so you got out of it. I actually burned out on the entitlement programs because Washington State, another failed state, there's a lot of legislation that's been passed that makes the job as an EMS worker very, very difficult. And so you can't turn people away. You can't tell them, you called because you have a splinter in your finger. I'm not taking you to the hospital. If they want to go, you got to take them. And there's a lot of abuse of the system. People will get drunk over at the casino and then call 911 because they don't have enough money for the cab because they live close to a hospital.
My goodness.
So they'll get to the hospital as soon as you get there. They jump out the back and run off. I mean, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on.
I know.
I got very, very tired of that. And I realized the joy had decreased in my life.
Yeah.
And so I realized it was time to get out. Worked as a postman for a little while. So federal agent.
Yeah.
And then started to really get involved in politics. Started to engage in more of the constitutional libertarian side of politics.
Okay.
And very quickly, I became a city council member, actually, for Spokane Valley. And loved that work. Truly approached it as an idealist, of serving the people. And I went in a little bit blind, to be quite honest with you. Because once I got inside, I got to see how the bureaucracy actually works. And I'll give you an example, and it's kind of a silly one, but you know how they're putting all these roundabouts in all over the place.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Most people hate them, right?
Yeah.
But the bureaucrats like them. And so they would present to us a street corner, hey, this is primed for a roundabout. And here's 3 options as far as building or constructing this thing. And they don't really care which way the city council votes, right? They have a preference, like A is their number 1. They want to do this one. But they'll present you with 2 other options. It's the illusion of choice, right? And nobody really thinks to say, well, are there other options? Or why do we need a roundabout here? I figured that on very quickly, and it kind of put me at odds with the established bureaucracy, even at that city council level. And then I did 2 things that made sure that I would never retain my seat. I pushed back against a mandate back in 2016, so well before. But there was in the Central Valley School District, they were trying to push the MMR for all students. And I had a number of moms that approached me and said, this isn't right. That should be, my choice, my freedom.
Right.
And I agree with them 100%. And so I pushed back against that. And that made me a lot of enemies. But the bigger event was the Attorney General of Washington State, Bob Ferguson, who's now running for governor of Washington. And unfortunately, it looks like he's probably going to be our governor. He had made a statement that he was going to ban assault weapons, whatever those are, right? They're scary. They're all black. And come on now. And he also was going to ban high-capacity magazines. And so kind of a tongue-in-cheek approach to this, I tried to get our city to declare itself as a Second Amendment sanctuary city. Now, this was during the time period where all the sanctuary cities were a big deal. Like San Francisco had declared themselves a sanctuary city for illegal immigrants. And so I said, all right, well, we're going to be a Second Amendment sanctuary city. And holy cow, that actually made international news. I didn't expect that at all. No, it didn't. And sadly enough, the city council at the time, there were 7 members, and they were all Republican. But there were 4 more establishment side. There were 2 more constitutionalists and 1 libertarian. And so there were 3 of us against 4. It didn't pass. But it ensured that the Republican Party actually ran somebody against me, and I lost my seat. And that was devastating for me. Just being very vulnerable with it. I thought, God had called me into politics. I truly believe politics is a mission field.
Yeah.
And I remember praying and saying, Lord, I feel like you called me into this, but why did I lose my seat? What's going on? And literally a week later, I was offered a talk show spot on the American Christian Network. And
wow.
I got to tell you, I love being a talk show host so much more than I do being a politician. Because I can say whatever I want.
Yes.
And if you don't like it, you just turn the dial,
Yeah, it's Okay, a few things that just jumped out at me. One, where you talk about how that period was devastating, what had happened. And one of the things that has been very, very evident in doing the show where I talk to business owners and entrepreneurs is it turns out that a number of them tell me this thing that was so devastating, not a lot of times it's not the next week or 2 weeks, but 6 months down the road, it's like, oh my goodness, like I wouldn't have done XYZ if I didn't have this thing that was terrible, that we thought was terrible, and it was actually ended up being this really cool thing that changed the course of their career. So yeah, I'm still trying to learn that because when I get devastating stuff, I was like, oh, this is terrible. This is awful. The second thing that would send us down a whole nother rabbit hole, but when you said, I think you said like the illusion of choice. Boy, I think that defines where we are as a nation politically big time.
Yes.
It's like the magician that's got the cards, and it's like, oh, pick a card, and the card, and you don't realize it, but he's controlling which card you pick. So you think you picked the 4 of hearts, and then when he says, oh, you got the 4 of hearts, it's like, well, you have no idea he was in control all the time.
That describes our political system so accurately. And there are outliers, obviously. Most of these are not allowed to see the light of day. And we can take examples, right? I just recently had Dr. Ron Paul on my show.
Oh,
who's an absolute hero of mine. I was massively involved in the 2008 revolution, the Ron Paul revolution. And this is a guy who was an outsider. I mean, his nickname for all of his 30 years at Congress was Dr. No, because he voted no on everything. It was great. You never had to worry about him. But the people organically really were attracted to his message. But the establishment made sure that he never was an option for us. Right. On the flip side, on the leftist side, we have Bernie Sanders.
Right. I was just thinking about that.
Yes. And a lot of the people who were part of the Ron Paul revolution went over to the Bernie Sanders side. And you're like, wait a minute, hold on a second. That is as far of a swing as you could possibly have. You got Ron Paul over here, who's this constitutionalist, freedom, liberty, libertarian mindset, over to this radical progressive socialist. Why did that happen? Well, it's because people intrinsically, we want to reject the status quo. We want that freedom. And they were offering it, granted, on complete opposite ends of the political aisle, but it still was attractive to a number of these individuals. Currently, we have Donald Trump, right, who is that outsider. And you can clearly see that the establishment on the Republican side of things did not want Donald Trump. They didn't want him the first time in 2016. They didn't want him in 2020. They had to go with him, right? And now they didn't want him again. I mean, they had all these different candidates, Nikki Haley. What kind of candidate is Nikki Haley? A UN ambassador? No, I don't like the United Nations. I don't want to be a part of the United Nations. But that's what the Republican Party wanted. And so you can see with Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney now that we're going over and endorsing Kamala Harris. George Bush has said, I'm going to stay out of it. Like, you can clearly see that these establishment candidates don't want anything to do with Donald Trump. Right. And this is why he's attractive to the vast majority of the American public.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, obviously, I own a Life Public House, and we spell life LYFE. It stands for Live Your Freedom Every Day. So I'm a big freedom guy. It's like, man, what generations before us fought for is freedom, and then it seems like we're so quick to just give it away. And I think that a bunch of society, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are standing up, but I think feel more comfortable when someone else is making decisions for them.
It is. I mean, we've grown to not only appreciate and accept, but actually long for the nanny state. And this is what our founding fathers warned us about. Benjamin Franklin specifically said to us that we prefer dangerous freedom over this idea of slavery, that we're giving up these essential liberties, God-given liberties. One of my pet peeves is when people talk about constitutional rights. We don't have any constitutional rights. The Constitution secures our rights. That's the entire purpose of the document. They are God-given rights. We are born with these. And so when you really examine what's going on culturally in modern America, you can see that even people that call themselves conservatives have accepted the nanny state in one degree or another. And you hear people talking about it all the time, somebody ought to make a law. No,
Right.
no, don't make a law. Like, self-govern, right? Enjoy your freedoms. Fight for them. There's 4 spheres of government, right? There is self-governance, there is family governance, there's church governance, and there's civil governance. And for some reason, we have advocated all of these and given it all over to the civil government. That's actually the solution. When you and I can say, eating 4 quarter pounders from McDonald's, probably a bad idea, right? Probably a bad idea for my health,
Probably.
right? That's self-governance, right? You have the freedom to do it. Absolutely you do. But you are recognizing that that's not a healthy option for me, right? When you're looking at family governance, right? It's you and I who have the responsibility to raise our children. It's not the government's. And yet, how many Christians and how many patriots are sending their kids over to the public education system, which is truly the public indoctrination system if we're getting down to it. And we do it because it's easy for us, right? It's hard to homeschool. It's hard to join a co-op, or it's expensive to send them to private school, right?
Right.
And yet we're sending it over to the government schools, and then we're really frustrated and angry when they come back and they're confused about their gender, or they're being taught things that, I didn't hire the school to teach my kids about the birds and the bees. That's my responsibility.
Right.
And then, sorry.
No.
Well, just continuing with that,
Yeah.
and then, sorry, I won't interrupt you again.
Oh, no, you're totally fine.
The church governance, this is another key element to our republic, is the church has certain responsibilities that are biblically laid out that we have given over to the civil government, right? We are supposed to care for the poor, right? And so the homeless epidemic, honestly, that we're having right now is because the church has abdicated that role over to the civil government. And the government does a terrible job at pretty much everything they put their hands on. So if the church would just simply step into that role, I think we'd see a solution very quickly. Marriage is another great example of this. When conservatives will oftentimes say, we want a law banning that there's marriage is defined between a man and a woman. Well, it's biblical. So get the government out of that role. The government's not the solution there. I don't want a law being passed to say that. No, I want the churches to actually start saying it. I want the churches to say, we don't do that. We don't marry a man and a man, or a woman, or now there's all sorts of different gender.
Yeah, well, another.
I know that's a whole other subject. But that is clearly the solution if we have the separation of powers and actually put government in its proper role, which, by the way, it's fine.
Right. It's crazy, but it's at least, getting on that topic, we always hear, well, man, the church is trying to get into the government business. We got to keep the church and state
separation of church
and it's like, whoa. Isn't it the government that's trying to get into the church's business? And that's where this, the church and state separation was ideally to protect churches, not to protect the government from the churches.
Yeah, and that's
that's
why we named the show Churches.
Yeah. So there. I mean, obviously, there's a. I think you and I probably share a lot of the same political beliefs, but if we try to keep this on the business side of things, so you get offered to host a talk show. Is that the current talk show that you're doing now?
Yeah. So 2017, I get offered to do a talk show, and I prayed about it, and I sought some counsel, and I realized the direction that I wanted to move with this was to have that church and state element. And so I approached my best friend, and he's a pastor, and we decided to call the show Church and State. We had a pastor and a former politician who was still working in politics, has still worked for a number of different organizations, trying to push Christians to get civically engaged. And so it was birthed there. It started out as just terrestrial radio, AM, FM radio. And then my co-host, Gabe Blongren, got the idea to start putting it on social media. And so we grew from there, created the LLC. So we are a business, and we've had a lot of success. We've had a lot of failures, but we just keep grinding. And that's truly, I think, when you talk to any businessman out there, they're going to tell you that exactly that. You got to grind, very, very well.
Heck yeah. And just, like I wanted to create a, coffee shop / public house. Little did I know that I would need to be a janitor, a lawyer, an accountant, a bookkeeper, a social media expert. That's like a marketing person. I'm like, I just wanted to create a place for people to come and connect. But man, there's so much more that goes into it. And I can't imagine all the stuff for you. So is this the Church and State Media? Is that the name of the business, correct?
Yeah, it's Church and State. The LLC is Church and State Media.
Okay.
The website is Church and State.
Thanks. Do you own that with a partner, or are you the owner?
So actually, my co-host just recently, within the last few months, took a trip to Africa and felt he was called into missions. And so he just recently left. And so right now, yes, I'm the sole owner of Church and State. I have actually I got approached by a different pastor by the name of Brian Dople, who works for Family Policy Institute of Washington.
Yep.
That's where we met.
Yes, that's where
Policy Institute through Idaho. And so we are going to have a pastor coming back on. I'm not a pastor. I don't pretend to be a pastor. But the idea behind Church and State is to have a pastor and a political guy.
Okay.
So I love theology. I love reading the Bible. I love deep diving on interesting topics within the Bible, which most of it's pretty interesting. I say most of it because the latter part of Numbers, rough. The genealogy, you can't even read all the names. You're like, I don't know how to pronounce that, but I'm kind of joking there. But we cover a lot of different subjects on Church and State. It's not just politics and religion. There's a lot of humor thrown into it. We love some of the obscure biblical topics. I love talking about the Nephilim, for example. But I mean, I'll cover flat Earth. I'm not a flat earther, but it's an interesting subject. Why not approach it?
Dude, I've had a lot of conversations about that, and like flat earthers that I'll talk to, like they have an answer for everything.
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
They can't be this, and they'll go, well, this is actually, and I'm like, okay, I'm not a flat earther, but I would say I was 100% not a flat earth person before, and I don't think I'm 100% now.
I'm flat Earth curious is what I'll say.
That's
absolutely.
Okay, that's my new. That's it. I'm going to steal that. That's a go.
Flat Earth curious and hollow Earth theory. Right, like that fascinates me. I could say I actually lean pretty heavily towards that idea. I think biblically it adds up. But I mean, there's all sorts of interesting things you can talk about. The geocentric universe, that the Earth is the center, the entire universe. Yeah, that's an interesting subject, especially when you're approaching it biblically. But we'll talk about aliens. Whatever's out there. I think they're interesting conversations to have, and I so believe in free speech that I want to be able to have these conversations.
Yes, 100% agree. And when we stop being able to talk about things, then it's like, man, we just go so far backwards, and we get angry and we get irritated, and it's like, wait, we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
Why? Like if I say, oh, dude, I'm a flat earther, why does that trigger so much in the person that I'm talking to? Why do they get angry? Yes, I agree. But like I'll talk to. I've got a friend who, very smart dude. Very logical. He's a flat earther, and it's interesting when they'll come up and they'll say, "Well, I believe," like people's reaction to him is like, it's not just oh, that's interesting. Let me talk about that. They get like angry or enraged, or how could you possibly be this? And I'm like, where does that come? Like, but it is. It's that we're indoctrinated, and it's so like we're so worried about like, wait a minute. I can't have you challenge my whole belief system.
And then that's really what it comes down to. Now, Dave, I don't know about you, but I so appreciate when I get on social media and, I'm scrolling through and I'm looking at interesting articles and whatnot. And these fact checkers come on and they keep me honest, right? They come in there and they tell me, this is disinformation. This is false. I hate that. Obviously, everybody hates that, right? Like, I don't need that. I don't need social media like Facebook or Instagram or X or whatever telling me that this story is false. Let me make up my own mind. Right. And then that's the thing. We should all be curious about so many different subjects and start studying instead of sitting in front of the television for 2-3 hours watching, a football game or The Simpsons or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Grab a book and start bettering your life, exploring these interesting ideas and concepts. It's going to make you a better person, in my opinion. And so,
Yes.
let's just take, for example, during the pandemic, right? During lockdowns and everything, right? And we were told that there was all this disinformation out there, right? That the is completely safe. Well, I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of people that have died suddenly. Right? I've had
It's crazy.
I've had some family members, dearly beloved family members, who believed the lie and took all the boosters, all the shots, and 2 of them are dead now from super cancers. Right? So we had that proved that, hey, it was actually wise to question the status quo, what the scientists and Dr. Fauci and all this and these things were telling us. Then they told us that we had to stay 6 feet apart, right? Fauci has been on the news admitting that he completely made that up, right? It's just an arbitrary number.
I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that. Like, that was an arbitrary number.
Okay. And yet, if you dared, like we had the little yellow X's painted everywhere, right?
Yes.
If you dared to stand outside of that X, people were freaking out on you. They're yelling at you. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was. That was a weird time for the world, but for humanity. But I think the good that came out of it is I think we have more truth seekers
100%.
now. And I was literally I was talking to a person that owns some medical facilities, and we're about the same age, and we were talking about, our youth today, like, oh, they don't like to work, or they don't, they're lazy, they have no work ethic, or they don't commit, or whatever it is. I mean, they're getting a lot of bad rap stuff, and some of it weren't. But the thing that we both had talked about is there's a lot of really amazing young people right now. And I think that, I could be wrong, but I think that these young people who, I've got a chunk of them, I've got 5 kids, and I don't like them to challenge me or whatever, but man, they're a lot more willing to challenge things, I think, after. And so I think the truth seekers, I think this younger generation might lead us older folks to find some truth, man, because we've been lied to about a lot of things for a long time.
I mean, you're 100% accurate, and we get called conspiracy theorists for questioning some of these established stories or narratives. Right? We were told that JFK was assassinated by a lone gunman, right? Most people don't believe that at all. We were told that there was no advanced warning for the attack on Pearl Harbor, that America was completely asleep and had no idea this was coming. That's been proven false, right? And you can go down the line. There's a large portion of the population now that doesn't believe we landed on the moon, because they've been asking questions about that. I'm one of them.
I was going to say.
All right.
I'm like, okay, this is crazy, but literally, I would be 100% we landed on the moon. I saw the pictures until after, and this whole searching for truth. I don't believe. I'm about 95% sure. I can't say 100%. I'm not really saying 100% sure on anything, but I'm 100% sure that we didn't land on the moon.
Yeah, I mean, my 100% is the Bible, right? I've always used that 100%.
Yep.
Right, but everything the government is telling me, I question now, right?
Yeah.
Recorded history, I'm questioning it, right? Norm Macdonald, the hilarious comedian, had said that it's interesting in this history book. It says the good guys always won every single time. Isn't that interesting, right? No, right? Obviously, that's not the case. Right. We take 9/11 for example, right? I was in the Marine Corps during 9/11. I watched the planes hit the Twin Towers, and my life completely changed at that moment. The base was on lockdown. We were ready for war. But very quickly after that, and that's actually kind of my wake-up call into all of this, was 9/11. I started asking questions like, how does a building that wasn't even hit by a plane implode and pancake down like it's actually been planned that way? Or how does a pilot who got a little bit of training on a Cessna fly a plane at ground level and strike the Pentagon? Things just don't add up there. Why did we attack Iraq when it was the Saudi Arabians who were the terrorists that actually flew the planes? There's a lot of questions there. And so you've got to be able to weed through the noise and the indoctrination of the mainstream media, the talking heads, the established political parties, and actually start doing the research yourself And then, you know what? You're actually, I think, not just becoming a fighter for liberty, but you're actually bettering mankind in pushing back against the narrative of really what we know is a satanic agenda. And that's really what it comes down to. I love eschatology. It's one of my favorite subjects. Even as a kid, like 70 years old, the pastor would be like, "What's your favorite book of the Bible?" Revelation. What? You're 8. Like, what are you doing, kid? I've always been fascinated by it. And we know that there's going to be a system that is established that is a globalist system, right? A one world government, a one world currency, a one world religion. And as you examine all of the things that are occurring culturally right now, you can see that they are implementing this plan. You can see that there's a move to do central backed digital currencies they're going to be, or central bank digital currencies. They're going to be backed by gold. Russia's kind of at the helm of this with the BRICS nations, but they're pushing for a one world currency. You got Elon Musk, who, I understand he's moved over to our political side of things, but he wants to put a chip in our heads. Like, yeah, no, thank you, right? And that clearly you can see the correlation between putting tech into your body and the mark of the beast, right? Where there's a mark that we take where we'll no longer be able to buy, sell, or trade things, and clearly see that agenda behind that. You've got all of these different Christian groups that are pushing for, Chrislam, the merging of Christianity and Islam, right? That all paths actually lead to God. Well, the Bible clearly tells us that's not the case. And so you can see their plans being implemented. And I think it's up to us, those of us that have actually woken up to this, where we're awake, we're not woke, right? But we've woken up to this idea, this mindset that they're pushing, which is right in our faces. And we are trying to fight against this for the betterment of society, for culture, for our children, our posterity, which is what our founding fathers wanted us to do.
Yeah, well, so the thing that's interesting to me is obviously, 100% of the people aren't going to agree with you on your viewpoints. Sure. And I guess this was a thing for me that kind of, my wife was, hopefully she's not watching this, but she was way more aware of what was going on before I was. It's hard when you've been married 30-something years to admit that possibly that she might have got something more right than I did. Yeah. You notice I said more right? I didn't say that. But good, yeah. The thing that really, really kind of just shocked my system was that you weren't even allowed to have questions. And so, and you see this with your company. Sure. The fact that you want to ask a question, when your question makes me angry and makes me vile and makes me want to harm you, dude, that something's not right. We should be okay with questions. Like I have 100%. I believe the Bible is 100% accurate. Mm-hmm. That's where we're going to agree completely. Is God is 100% the ruler of everything. I believe Jesus is Lord, and in the end, that's what's going to come out. Is Jesus is Lord. No doubt because the Bible says it. Yep. So make no mistake, that's exactly what I believe. So if you were to come to me and say, I don't think God's real, how do you think God's real? I'm not going to get angry. Yeah. Yeah. So the fact that me questioning something like the pandemic made people so angry, that's what caused me to be like, okay, something's off here.
You can clearly see that the narrative that they've been pushing has been working. There's a plan by them to keep us divided, right? And they've done this for a very long time.
Yep.
By race, by sex, by religion. Yep. It's all designed to divide us, because if we're divided, we're not focusing on the common enemy. And the common enemy is those that are enemies of the Republic. And so, yeah, you can see this. I mean, I hate this idea that we need to regulate speech, right? That hate speech shouldn't be allowed. Do you know how you destroy antiquated and abhorrent ideas? You let them be talked about. I'll give you an example. My wife's Hispanic. My kids are Hispanic. And I was at an event, and I was working the table. I was working for one of my political jobs that I had. And I started talking with this guy, and he was asking me some questions, and we seemed to have some ideas that were aligned. And so he asked me, I was giving away free magazines. He asked me, which magazine should I take? And I said, we just released this one, and it's about National Socialism. It absolutely destroys that this is a good system of government. And he says, oh, that's interesting because I'm a National Socialist. And at that point, I realized I was talking to a legitimate Nazi, right? And I was like, wow, this is interesting. Now, I hate Nazis. I hate fascism. I hate communism. I basically hate almost all of the isms. Yeah. And so, but what did I do? Do I want to punch Nazis like Antifa? No, I engaged him into a conversation, right? And we started talking. At one point during the conversation, he told me that because I had children with a Hispanic woman, that their DNA was actually internally fighting, that they actually were lesser human beings, right? Now, that's a statement that can make any father pretty angry, right?
Big time.
But what did I do? At that point, there was actually a crowd that had gathered to watch this exchange of ideas. No, I just destroyed him logically and systematically with the truth. And that's what we need to be doing. And what happened at that point? Did I convert that guy from his belief system? Probably not. But the crowd that had gathered, that heard this exchange, right? They all walked away going, yeah, you know what? Maybe, I didn't know all that about these modern day Nazis, these neo-Nazis. But you know what? That's a ridiculous idea. And so I'm going to reject it, and I'm going to teach my kids to reject it. That's how we destroy those ideas.
Absolutely. So we share another similarity. I don't know if you know this, but I have 3 different ethnic groups in my family. So I've got one of my my son. I don't want to mention his name, but he's adopted. His mother's from India biologically, and she was over here. And then my youngest son is from Africa. Like, having a lot of cultures in under my roof doesn't make me an expert on it, but I think it makes me to where I'm aware of things.
Sure.
Quite a bit. Well, the interesting thing is, when you're going back to the whole, pandemic, what I don't know what we call it, but so I had a lady by the name of, I knew this would happen. Her name escaped me, but
okay.
She was the attorney in California. That remember when Newsom wanted to have people have their on their cell phones like their record.
Yes.
And she was the attorney that thought that Lee
Dundas.
Yes. So she spoke at life.
Yeah.
And the fact that she spoke at life, people were calling me, I have no idea what. White nationalist, fascist. I was called homophobic. Like, what does that have to do with Lee Dundas? So I was just, all these things were being called to me that I was like all this stuff. And I'm like, so this one lady, she was like, we started having this exchange, and it was just, I was basically using like basic logic. I said, hey, I'm a public house. She called me up and wants to speak on medical freedom. I'm kind of interested in it as well, but my first response is always going to be, if this isn't harmful to somebody or if it's not hateful, then I'm open. Let's have a discussion. So she was like, well, we need to take this conversation private, because I think she knew she was being completely ridiculous. So she called me a fascist, and I'm from Idaho, so I had to look that up. She was like, hey, if you have her speak, and I could pull this up on Facebook. If you have her speak, I will look to see who your followers are. I will do everything I can to harm your business. Mm-hmm. I'll give you negative reviews, get my friends to give me negative reviews, and then I will look at your followers and try to give their businesses negative reviews if you have her speak there. And I was like, to be honest with you, I didn't know who Lee Dundas was before she came to speak at my place. But I just said, I go, no, so you're threatening to harm me, my family, and my friends if I don't do what you want me to do, and you're calling me a fascist? Yeah. Literally, you could track this on my Facebook thing. That was the end of the conversation. Yeah. But I think it is. If we have conversations with people, logic usually prevails, and
it does. Because it's based on truth, and you really, if you look at most of the leftist principles, they're all based on a lie. Why? Because the father of all of them is Satan. And we note that when we explore, when you look at the tenets of like communism, for example, right, the abolition of private property, right? Well, Exodus 22, actually in the Bible, talks about the rights of private property, right? This is original to America.
Right.
Some of our ideas, right? This comes directly from the Bible. It's interesting because the left wants that forced compliance all the time. Now, you own a coffee house, right? And I like your coffee house. I've been there a number of times. I don't like Starbucks, right? Number one, the coffee doesn't taste very good. It's always a little burnt to me. And Starbucks has a tendency to display rainbow flags quite frequently at their establishment. Do I want to go throw a brick through the window of Starbucks because I disagree with them? Do I want to talk to the general manager there and tell him, I'm going to tell everybody not to go here? No, right? Because it's the free market, and I love the free market.
Yes.
If I don't like Starbucks, you know what? The great thing about living in the Pacific Northwest is we're obsessed with coffee. I can go to find another coffee place pretty easy. Right? There are other places in the United States that they don't enjoy that. I feel bad for them because they don't get to be as caffeinated as we are. But that's the beauty of the free market system: is competition arises, and the cream arises to the top, right? And that's why you've been successful there. They honestly work in so many lies they can't even keep things straight. The best lies, though, always have a little element of truth into them, right? So when she called you a fascist, right? Now, if you called her a communist, she probably wouldn't have an issue with it, or a socialist, she probably wouldn't have an issue with that either. But if you called her a fascist, which you did, basically, you're the fascist, not me, right? Then they get offended. Why? Because fascism is actually a left-wing ideology. And a lot of conservatives don't actually know this. So if you take the spectrum, right, and for the audience here, right, if you've got on one end 100%, right, and at the other 0%, right? Now throw government into that. Well, communism is total control. It controls every aspect of their citizens' life. So that's that 100% mark. At the 0%, we have anarchy, right? No government at all. Everybody's just doing whatever they want. And then you start moving down. Now, our founding fathers established a republic, which is as close to anarchy as you can while still having order, all right, law and order through the Constitution, through the Declaration. But when you go to communism, a step away from that would be socialism, right? They don't control as much as communism does. But moving on from there, you follow it up with national socialism, right? Not socialism as an idea is to encompass the entire world. National socialism is specifically for a nation. And then fascism is another far left ideology. But when the leftist, when a communist says a fascist is far right, well, they are in fact right of the communists. Right. Right. But they're not far right. They're not actually an anarchist or a Republican, not big R Republican or little R Republican, right? That's the lie that they're able to engage in, is that this is right ideology. Well, it is right of communism, but it's still a left-wing ideology.
Yep. So, and I was just thinking, because obviously you're not hidden with what your beliefs are. You're not hidden with what your, and I think a lot of businesses sometimes struggle with that. They're so worried about efficient people, and they're so worried about, I need everything, I'm afraid of losing the dollar, so I'm going to take a stance on nothing. But has that, if you wouldn't mind, talk about the effects that has had on your business, positive and negative. I mean, what's there?
Sure. So I've been attacked numerous times. I've actually had death threats against me. That's okay. Number one, I'm always armed. Number two, as a Christian, you can't threaten me with a good time. You kill me, I'm in heaven. Awesome. Cool. Right? That doesn't scare me. But yes, there's definitely been a lot of attacks, and my family and I had to have a discussion. My wife, knows that there is some dangers associated with standing up like this. And we're okay with that. But the media has gone after me. I mean, more times than I can remember. If you ever listen to my show, I always intro it with calling or saying, once again, your favorite far-right shock jocks, right? This is because Vice Media did a hit piece on my show and called us far-right shock jocks. And so I was like, okay, I'll use that then, right? And that takes the sting away from it, actually. It's kind of fun to do. Like, oh, you call me a far-right shock jock? Okay, I'll wear that. That's kind of fun. And so it's not the idea of not standing for anything
Right.
means that you're that soft, squishy middle. Biblically, God says that he would prefer that you are hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, he will vomit you out of his mouth. I understand as a businessman, maybe not, if you're a coffee house, for example, maybe not like Gadsden flags all over the place and, replicas of ARs or something like I get that, right? If you don't want to do that. But I still believe that you should be standing up for what is truthful and what benefits society, right? When we see this transgender craze, for example, right? History is not going to judge us well off of the actions that we're taking right now. We've got government indoctrination, pseudoscience that is telling us that you can be any gender. And now we're actually experimenting. We're allowing the government to experiment on our children in ways that they will never recover from. When you're chopping off body parts, when you're taking pharmaceuticals to increase your estrogen or testosterone, this is literally Frankenstein's monster, right? That was a horror show, and we're living it right now. We need to stand up against that, and I would encourage every single business, because the vast majority of the American public has had it up to here. We're done with this. We're done with this narrative. Unfortunately, the left is louder than almost everyone else, and so that there's a perception that they're organized. There's a lot of people who believe this. We're in North Idaho, number one. This is kind of a safe haven for Christians and conservatives. But even across the country, even in places like San Francisco, there are people that are starting to push back. There's Chicago. There's a number of people that are openly endorsing Donald Trump and supporting him. Signs are going up all over the place. Not necessarily a hotbed of conservatism. The country's done with this leftist ideas. And I think a prudent and wise business owner would actually see the trends and jump ahead of it.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because even, regardless, Republican, Democrat, whatever, I think that both parties are really kind of like, man, the pendulum has swung too far.
Yes.
And most people that you talk to, regardless of where they're at politically, and to some degree, regardless of where they're at, even religiously, think that chopping off body parts and allowing boys to compete against girls, allowing a boy to go in and box a girl, they're not okay with that. But you got this small percentage of people that have a very loud voice, and then they appeal to, or they try to appeal to, how could you not be loving? You don't understand this person because you're not transgender, or you're not whatever, and it's just not loving. And it's the, well, wait a minute, I'm loving, so I guess I want to be like. I guess I'm okay with it because I'm loving.
Yep.
And I think it's crazy, but as a society, I'm definitely not trying to turn this into a show strictly about God and religion. But man, if we just, regardless of where you're at, if you look at the Bible and just say, man, we should base because the Bible tells us, hey, man, we should be respectful and loving to all people. All people deserve, regardless of how far left or how far right they are, people deserve to be loved and respected and listened to. But man, it's we don't communicate anymore.
We don't. And really the question is what is love without truth, right?
Yes.
The Bible tells us that to speak truth in love. And so a true Christian is going to actually be loving enough to tell somebody you're going down the wrong path.
Right.
This existence that we have right now is temporary. We know that, right? And whether you're an atheist or a Christian, we all know our time on earth is temporary. We are all on a journey to die.
Yep.
And so if you and I have this blessed assurance in Jesus Christ, we should be loving enough and truthful enough to tell somebody, hey, I'm a sinner too. There's no hierarchy to my sin, right? I'm a liar, or I struggle with gambling or whatever it is, but you're so you're worse than me. No, we don't believe that at all, right? Every single one of us is a sinner. We've all screwed up more times than we can remember, right? I've done horrible things in my past, but I know that God has redeemed me. And so I want that for everybody. I want that for the atheist communist who's screaming in my face, who's still wearing a mask. I want freedom for them. Not in the sense of, American freedom. I want freedom for that person's soul. And the only way that they get that is if they come to a saving grace or a saving knowledge of the grace of Jesus Christ. And so that compels me to actually be vocal, to get out there and to share my faith, which, oh, by the way, I believe we were commanded to do that, right?
Yeah. It
mean,
wasn't a suggestion.
No, yeah. That's our entire purpose.
Maybe it would be a good idea if you have time that you should probably go ahead and tell people that I love them and I came to earth to die for them and I want to be reconciled with them.
Yes.
That wasn't ever an idea. Like,
No, not at all.
No, and the thing is, it's I think fear is at the basis of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
I think we as a society become afraid. If somebody says, you're a fascist, right away, whoa, what did I do that makes you think that? It's like, well, no, I'm not a fascist. I don't care what you get. I know who I am. I'm not that.
You need to step forward into it. All right,
Yeah.
This is all by design. So, everybody's probably familiar with the book Rules for Radicals, right? Saul Alinsky. And this is all by design. When they attack you, when they call you a name, a homophobe, a sexist, a racist, whatever it is, right?
Right.
It all puts us back on our heels. Like, I'm going to be called that.
Right.
No, I'm not that at all, right? And you automatically get on the defense. That's not how you win. You go on the offense. I'm a fascist? Really? Why don't you define fascism for me? Fascism is this. Okay, this is how you define fascism. Who's the political organizations that are operating in a fascist method, right?
Right.
Go back on the offense with them.
Right.
And once again, you're speaking truth in love. So you're not calling, you're not screaming at them and spitting on them or whatnot. But you've got to come to a position. Once again, this goes back to what I was talking about, not sitting in front of the television, actually reading, bettering yourself, so that when presented with these ideas, when somebody attacks you by calling you one of these names, you have the knowledge to actually defend it and to actually not only defend yourself, but put a little bit of self-doubt into their mind. Because if they start doubting their beliefs, what they've been told, maybe they'll start investigating and start pursuing truth. And you and I both know that when you start pursuing truth, eventually you go looking upstream for the source of that truth. Well, we know that source of truth is Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And I think it is the, you've mentioned it so many times, but it is confronting things in love. And, obviously I've got, whatever, my issues because I'm a human being. I wish I didn't, but I do. So it's constantly just, literally, hey, God, just help me with my stuff.
Yeah.
Because, I want to represent God in the best way possible. But yeah, I think it's definitely interesting because, again, by calling you a name or whatever, I don't want to be known as that. So I'm going to retreat or whatever. And I think you're right on, man. We have to, business owners have to step in and say, okay, wait a minute here. You're calling me, a classic example about the business that I bought. I'd say they had, 7 or 8 rainbow flags in the windows and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I bought it, took them down. That really upset a lot of people. And I'm like, wait a minute here. Well, you're a homophobic or you're this. And I'm like, well, no. Hold it here. I don't dislike, there's people I dislike, but I try not to dislike anybody. I try to love people. I might dislike their ideology, but I try to love people.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't dislike someone for their choices, but that doesn't mean I have to fly their flag. I don't know anything about NASCAR.
There's not much to know. You just do left turns.
The culture, the whatever. I don't fly NASCAR flags. It's not.
Do you fly a communist Chinese flag?
No.
Right? Do you hate the Chinese? Obviously not. It's ludicrous.
But it's crazy that, if you don't do what I tell you to do, then you must be a hateful person. And I'm like, you know what? Really sick of that bull crap. And that kind of stuff angers me. Well, I know this is a show about entrepreneurship businesses, but man, when I met you the first night, I wanted to talk to you about being the business owner. I mean, you own this, and you make choices knowing that there's going to be repercussions for your choices. But I wanted the message that you share. Other business owners need to oh my goodness, he's right, or man, maybe everybody's not going to do a podcast called Church and State and just front line, but maybe business owners will say, okay, wait a minute here. I think it's okay for me to tell people what I believe, or I think it's okay and I don't even have to shout what I believe.
It's true, but you could also benefit. What's the purpose of starting a business, right? To make it to where you're actually thriving, where you're successful.
Right.
That's the American dream. And what do we see? Let's just go back to, for example, right? We had churches that were told to lock down, all right? And there were churches that you had to make appointments, and you couldn't sit with limited capacity, all this. And then there were some churches, I'm in Washington State, so it's a lot worse than over here. But there were some churches that said, no, we're going to abide by Acts 5:29. We're going to obey God over man. And God told us to not forsake the gathering. So we're going to open our doors to everyone and anyone else to come. What happened during that time period? Those churches that remained open, they blew up. I mean, there were so many people in the congregation that were hungry for the word of God. Let's apply that to business. During the same time period in Washington State, every business, especially small businesses, the corporate, Walmarts, and all those could stay open, of course. Yeah,
just freezing.
But the small business could not, right? Well, there were some brave individuals who opened up their doors, and you know what happened? People flooded in, and they were making money hand over fist. Restaurants that were opening up, coffee shops that were opening up, and they were hiring more staff because they couldn't keep up with the amount of people that wanted to actually be inside their business buying their products. Right? If you can just take that, what happened during, and you can actually take that idea and put it out to the entire what's going on culturally, you can see that there is a hunger for people to actually do business with business owners who support the Constitution, who have faith in God. And if you're afraid that you're going to anger a few leftists by actually standing up, you're missing such an incredible opportunity for all of these great people out here that love the Republic, that love God, that are looking to do business with you, but they don't know about you. They don't know that you're one of us.
Yeah.
Right? So stand up. Just take one thing. You don't have to be like me. I'm in your face, right? Obviously, but I'm a talk show host. I can do that. But just stand up. Say, hey, we honor the cross. We honor our troops. You put a little sign like that in your business, people are going to love it, and they're going to flock to it. Hey, I like this. They support veterans. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? I mean, small businesses go bankrupt constantly. You know that better than I do, right? Why not at least try to actually be a focal point for the community, for people that believe the same things that you and I believe?
Yeah. Definitely, well said. So in our discussion, and I mean, it was hopefully some of the things you said, inspired, dude, I got to do this and do that, and I got to figure out what's going on. And I tried to keep going down those rabbit holes because I'm definitely very passionate about freedom, obviously, and just having that name in our business has caused anger for people, and which I don't get. When did freedom become bad?
That's a great question.
I mean, it's
no, we want oppression.
I don't get it, but I think and then when we're talking about just the whatever mandates and oppression and name calling and all the stuff and why we can't communicate, those get me passionate a little bit. So, but man, I wanted to say just publicly or whatever it is, that I appreciate businesses like yours that I call you frontline businessman because you are out there and you are being vocal, and everybody's not a talk show host. Everybody can't do that to that level that you can, But man, I would encourage business owners that are out there, man, be true to yourself. Don't hide who you are. You know, we have, I think we've had to, we have thought that it's, really the name of Christianity sometimes. We've thought, oh, well, the Christian thing to do is to
Not offend.
not offend.
I'm pretty sure the Bible offends me every single time I read it. You know why? Because I'm a sinner.
Dude. But yeah, that's a whole other thing. The Bible's definitely offended me pretty much every time I read more than just a couple of verses.
It's in check constantly, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh man, I do that. Gosh, I need to do better about that, right? I need to read my Bible more. But yeah, that's the entire thing. Going back to original sin, we are separated now from God because of our sinful nature. And so the Bible is offensive to us. Christianity is offensive to us.
Right.
And that's a good thing because it's keeping us in check, and it's actually pushing us to better ourselves, to become more Christ-like. And so, yeah, if you're worried about being offensive, sorry.
Right. And I think that it's, obviously there are several things, but one of them, the main things that I'm taking, or hopefully was heard, and if it wasn't heard, I'm repeating it now, but man, let's have conversations. And just because somebody asks something doesn't mean they're looking for a fight. Maybe they're looking for an answer, or maybe they're looking for your opinion, or maybe they're looking for an understanding of why you believe what you believe. And as much as we can do to help people in all of our circles be okay with conversations without being, there's regular conversations and there's aggressive conversations.
Yes.
And every conversation doesn't, sometimes we have to have aggressive conversations.
Yeah, sometimes it's warranted.
Yeah, but every conversation doesn't have to be aggressive. Sometimes it's the next person asks you or tells you that they believe in the flat earth. Don't get mad at them. It's their opinion.
It's going to be a fun conversation, I guarantee you
It
that.
will be. So, which is a whole nother.
Well, they're demons. I mean, that's my belief system.
Yeah, but it's a whole nother deal. Like how big the universe is that we, have we been lied to with how big it is? And,
Yeah.
And I think there's a whole bunch of stuff, but we don't have to agree to have a conversation.
Yeah.
But maybe me talking to you about something that you have a different viewpoint from me and I have a different viewpoint from you, maybe you gain a little bit of understanding of who I am and I gain some of you, and it's okay to agree to disagree.
And you can have that mutual respect. Right?
Absolutely.
And I think right now it's such an important time for America. We need to stop dividing over what separates us. I do a joint venture with a Catholic friend of mine, and we talk about church unity. I'm not Catholic, right? And I think some of their ideas are a little off base, right? But here's the thing. They love Jesus Christ. And I guarantee you that when we get to heaven, that it's going to be populated with Catholics and Protestants, Methodists and Presbyterians. Nobody's going to have their theology completely correct, right? We're going to go up there and be like, oh, I was wrong about that. Oops. And so why divide over that, especially when you can see what's happening to our country? We need to be united on our common ideas, chiefly in the belief of Jesus Christ. And then we can actually push back against this agenda. I would love the opportunity. I know we're kind of winding down, but for the audience, if you want to check out what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah, so churchestate.media is our website, and you can see we've got a lot of different guests that we've had on the show. We've had Eric Trump, Dinesh D'Souza, Roger Stone, General Flynn, Dr. Ron Paul I mentioned. On the Christian side, I've had Bodhi Bachman on. I just had Ken Ham on, which was a phenomenal interview.
Yeah.
Some really big guests. As I said, we're going to be talking about all sorts of different subjects, so you're not going to get bored. It's a daily show, so Monday through Friday, you're going to be able to go on the podcast or Rumble. We're pretty much everywhere. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok now. I don't really feel great about that one, but I'm on it. The only place you can't find us is YouTube because they banned us.
Yeah, and I'm obviously just getting into this stuff, so I'm still figuring out how to do it. had to do all of that. So I'm probably going to be bugging you about
Please, yeah.
getting some knowledge and all that. But yeah, so so you stream it. You stream it at a specific time in this.
No, everything's pre-recorded.
Oh, okay, okay.
We probably will go into some live content pretty soon here.
Okay.
We're working through that, but yeah, I mean, it's like as you said, you're a janitor, you're all this stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's amazing the amount of things that I had to learn in doing this, and I thought maybe working for myself I'd be less busy. No,
yeah,
not at all.
Usually, entrepreneurship means you're trading a 40-hour-a-week job for a 24/7 job.
Exactly.
I'm sure this happens to you. It happens to me. 1 o'clock in the morning. This is a good idea. You hope to remember in the morning and write it down.
I'm right there with you. I've got a little bit of an ADHD brain, and so going to sleep is really difficult for me. I'm laying in bed that's a rough one. But it's still there's so much freedom, there's so much enjoyment in actually pursuing something that you love.
Yeah, that's super cool, dude. And thank you so much for coming on here. And I am, like I said, this is a new venture for me, but I'm having a blast. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that this becomes something for business owners, that we can learn from each other. We can hear each other's struggles and successes, life hacks, business hacks, whatever you want to do. And, so if you're watching this and you subscribe to the channel, share this, comment on it. I'm not afraid of any questions that you might have because I think the questions are good. And so do all those things. You guys all probably know what to do more than I do. So thanks for joining. See you next time. And thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.